If you snore at night or you get hot when you sleep, check out our sponsor, 8 Sleep, who just released the Pod 4 Ultra. It can cool your bed down to 20 degrees below the room temperature so you get better sleep, or it can heat your bed up, and it can sense when you're snoring and lift your head so you can breathe better. It's truly amazing. I use an 8 Sleep pod every night. Once you try it, you'll understand how big of a difference it makes for sleep. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman for $350 off. The link is in the description. Welcome to the show. What a bombshell. A newly unsealed court filing reveals new evidence from the criminal case against Donald Trump, a, quote, increasingly desperate president who, while losing his grip on the White House, quote, used deceit to target every stage of the electoral process. This is a new court filing that was previously filed by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, but has now been ordered released by the judge. And it reveals the desperate nature, the erratic nature, the unhinged nature of a failing then President Donald Trump, who was losing his grip on power and was willing to do whatever the hell it took to try to stay in power. Quote, so what? The filing quotes Trump as saying to an aide when he was told Mike Pence has been rushed to a secure location because the violent protesters are shouting, hang Mike Pence. Trump's reaction, so what? Another Trump quote, the details don't matter. That's what Trump said when he was told by an advisor that a lawyer who was mounting his legal challenges wouldn't be able to prove the allegations in court because they were made up. Trump said the details don't matter. He wanted the challenges filed. He wanted everything going forward, including fundraising for this from his supporters, many of whom really couldn't afford to be giving Trump money for this absolutely ridiculous wild goose chase. Trump intentionally lied to the public, to state election officials, to his own vice president. If we believe this filing, it points to Trump knowing he didn't really win. We've asked this question rhetorically, but also in reality. Did Trump ultimately convince himself that he really won, delusionally deluding himself, or did Trump know he didn't win throughout this whole thing and was knowingly lying? This filing, this is one data point, this filing points to Trump knew he didn't win. He didn't care. He wanted Mike Pence to make an unconstitutional attempt to deny Joe Biden the victory. He wanted state officials to challenge or overturn results. He knew he lost, but he was still telling them, I don't care. You should do it anyway. You should do it anyway. Trump, according to this filing, privately described some of the very claims he was pushing publicly as, quote, crazy. Let that sink in. There were voter fraud claims that you knew were crazy, that I knew were crazy, that we knew when Rudy Giuliani would tout them in one of those COVID hearings where he gave people COVID. The hearings weren't about COVID. He had COVID at the hearings. We all knew they were crazy. Trump privately knew they were crazy. And yet people around Trump and Trump himself continued to push these lies. All of a sudden, J.D. Vance's non-answer during the debate the other day, when he was asked, did Trump lose? It all of a sudden looks much, much worse, given this documentation that Trump knew all along that these were false and fraudulent claims. In the filing, Jack Smith calls out Trump's Waco, Texas rally. This is one of the other great things. It's in a way not good that these trials keep getting delayed. But in another way, it continues to allow Jack Smith to add more elements into the filings. In the filing, Jack Smith points to a rally Trump did in Waco, Texas, where he called the violent insurrectionists patriots and hostages and played that revised version of the national anthem sung by some of the J6 defendants. We called it the treason national anthem at the time, and Trump said he would pardon a bunch of them. That now is part of this filing. And maybe most importantly, this filing points to a sharpening legal focus on Trump acting privately rather than in his official capacity. This is going to be a critical aspect if and when this trial goes forward. which is that Trump's lawyers, as we've told you, have been arguing, including before the Supreme Court, that Trump has immunity for all or almost all of these actions because they were carried out as part of Donald Trump's role officially as president of the United States. This filing from Jack Smith contests that. It argues that none of what Trump was doing was as a government official, but was rather as a candidate, and therefore it would not be protected by immunity. The fraudulent elector schemes, arguing that Trump had a personal role there, not an official role as president, but a personal role, and therefore it is not protected by immunity. Trump's social media use, his Twitter account, his Truth Central account, etc. That was all Trump the candidate, not Trump the president, and therefore you can't cite immunity. Imagine for a moment if Trump's Twitter account ended up being his downfall. It would really be the icing on the cake. And finally, that Trump attempting to interfere with state electoral processes. Remember, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break. The argument from this filing is that that was also Trump, the private citizen candidate for the presidency, not Trump, the sitting president of the United States. It is undoubtedly a convoluted and complex legal proposition to prove that, but it is clearly the argument that Jack Smith is making. The question I got from many of you about this filing overnight is, David, is this the October surprise that we've been wondering? Will it come? I don't know the answer to that. That this is certainly an October surprise, but is it the final October surprise? I don't know. And if I'm perfectly frank with you, I don't know that anyone who is still supporting Trump will be swayed by a filing that they will simply say, it's crooked Jack Smith working at the direction of Joe Biden. That's the storyline Trump is told, even though it's not true. I don't know that this will really sway too many people, but it is triggering one particular orange man. And that's what I want to talk about next. Donald Trump absolutely flying off the handle, losing his mind after this bombshell legal filing from prosecutor Jack Smith was released. We already went over the details. It sent Trump on a total and complete bender. Here's what Trump had to say. All of these posts coming on Donald Trump's failing social media platform, Truth Social. Trump starting yesterday afternoon, quote, the release of this falsehood-ridden, unconstitutional J6 brief immediately following Tim Walz's disastrous debate performance and 33 days before the most important election in the history of our country is another obvious attempt by the Harris-Biden regime to undermine and weaponize American democracy and interfere in the 2024 presidential election. Deranged Jack Smith, the hand-picked prosecutor of the Harris-Biden DOJ, and the D.C.-based radical left Democrats are hell-bent on continuing to weaponize the Justice Department in an attempt to cling to power. Trump is dominating the election cycle, leading in the polls, and the radical Democrats throughout the deep state are totally, quote, freaking out. This entire case is a partisan, unconstitutional witch hunt that should be dismissed entirely, just like the Florida case was dismissed. Trump continuing, and you can see the rage building by the number of capital letters he uses. The Democrat Party is guilty of the worst election interference in American history. They are trying to destroy our democracy, allowing millions of people to enter our country illegally. They are determined to stop us from winning back the White House, sealing the border, and making America great again. But they will fail, and we will save our nation. Trump continuing. Democrats are weaponizing the Justice Department against me because they know I am winning, and they are desperate to prop up their failing candidate, Kamala Harris. The DOJ pushed out this latest hit job today because J.D. Vance humiliated Tim Walz last night in the debate. The DOJ has become nothing more than an extension of Joe's and now Kamala's campaign. This is egregious prosecutorial misconduct and should not have been released right before the election. The Democrat Party is turning America into a third world country that tries to censor, harass, and intimidate their political opponents. What they have done to our justice system is one of the great all-time tragedies. I should interject here as we go to the next post that none of this is true, in case that lest there be any doubt. Trump then continuing engaging caps lock election interference. And then finally, in all caps, for 60 days prior to an election, the Department of Injustice is supposed to do absolutely nothing that would taint or interfere with a case. They disobeyed their own rule in favor of complete and total election interference. I did nothing wrong. They did. The case is a scam, just like all of the others, including the documents case, which was dismissed. Now, with regard to Trump saying 60 days prior to the election, Trump did not have the same concerns when in 2016, just before the presidential election, James Comey came out and, for a reason we still don't understand, held another press conference about the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Trump welcomed that. In fact, he cited it and said, look at what's going on with Hillary. You've got to vote for me. Of course, it is not about principle. It is about what's good for me right now. Trump believes this filing is bad for him right now. Trump believed James Comey's Hillary Clinton presser was good for him in 2016. And it was, there's no doubt. And that is the only thing that Trump actually cares about. Now, my immediate reaction is there's really no reason for Trump to flip out like this, because the people that are currently voting for Trump do not care about this filing. You think they're going to read this however many page, 195 page or something filing? You think they care that CNN reports on it? No, they don't. Now, Fox News did report on it, and we're going to get to that later or tomorrow if I run out of time. But if I were Trump, as is always the case, I would say nothing about this, and most of his followers probably wouldn't even hear about it. I always get hot when I sleep. It's plagued me my whole life, but I found the solution, and it is 8 Sleep. Our sponsor, 8 Sleep, has released the newest model of the Pod, the incredible device that fits right over your mattress like a fitted sheet. It can cool down your bed to just 20 degrees below the room temperature, or it can heat your bed up, which can be useful in the winter or for muscle relaxation. I keep mine on the cold setting. It is a great feeling to sleep with one of these. I just wake up more refreshed, and science has shown that lowering your body temperature at night can let you sleep better and feel better the next day. And 8 Sleep's new model, the Pod 4 Ultra, has a revolutionary new feature. It can detect when you are snoring and lift your head so that you can breathe better. Pod 4 Ultra also introduces an adjustable base that fits between your mattress and your bed frame to add reading and sleeping positions. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman. Use code Pacman to get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra. The link is in the description. You know, one of the conversations I frequently have in the real world when people meet me and they learn what I do is they say, right, okay, you do the show, but what's your full-time job? And I explain, no, this is my full-time job. And they say, wow, can you really make a living doing that? And of course, the answer is yes, depending on how your show is funded. An easy way is you just get hired by some big corporate media company. You have layers of editors, and you can be fired at any time if you say the wrong thing. And by wrong, I mean something your editors don't want you talking about. The alternative is what we do, which is we're funded directly by our audience. No one person can influence what we do say or the positions that I take, because all they can really do at the end of the day is threaten to pull their $3 or $6 a month in funding or their $60, $70 a year. They are free to do that, and I'm free to continue doing the show the way I want to do it, and it gives us an independence that many in corporate media simply don't have. All of this to say, if you like the show and you value the independence of the show, I invite you to consider signing up at joinpacman.com. We offer a suite of perks for our subscribers, including an extra show every single day called The Bonus Show, which Alex Jones despises.
Oh, the bonus show where you want to make money, but everybody else that makes money to fund themselves is bad.
Yeah, well, we're funding ourselves, Alex. Thank you very much. Maybe we'll buy InfoWars, which is now up for auction with some of the membership money. Actually, there is a liberal group looking at buying InfoWars, but we'll talk about that on The Bonus Show today. We also provide commercial-free audio and video streams of the show every day for our members, and so many other things. So consider it. Consider signing up at joinpacman.com. In a disgusting new interview with News Nation, Donald Trump has admitted that he would deport legal immigrants if he feels like it. Donald Trump told the interviewer, Allie Bradley, that even though the Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio are here legally under a framework that's been the law for decades called temporary protected status, since Trump feels like they are, quote, overrunning Springfield, he would simply revoke their protected status and deport them. This is a dangerous lunatic who does not respect the rule of law, despite claiming to be the candidate of law and auto, or sometimes correctly said law and order. Trump's mass deportations will include legal immigrants. Listen to this.
Springfield is such a beautiful place. Have you seen what's happened to it? It's been overrun. You can't do that to people. They have to be removed.
So you would revoke the temporary protected status?
Absolutely. I'd revoke it and I'd bring them back to their country.
I would send them back to their country. This is one of the bigger dangers of another 4 years of Trump. It's way bigger than the immigrants, but I'm going to get back to the immigrants in a moment. You don't like the Iran deal? Even though Iran didn't violate it, cancel it. That's what Trump did. Don't want to be part of the Paris Climate Agreement, even though we signed on to it? Get out of it. Don't want to meet your responsibilities under NATO for shared defense of NATO allies? Say you won't do it unless they start paying more because you say they should be paying more. And then at the tail end of this, now, you don't like some specific immigrants who have legal status under the law? Just revoke it and kick them out. Now, whether Trump would in fact be able to do this is a different question, but his desire to do it alone is disgusting. Green card holders can be deported if they commit certain crimes. That's part of the law right now. That's not about a president saying, I don't like you and I don't like you. And I now have to, because I said something really stupid. I said, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Because I said that and it was stupid, now I need to make good on it. Sort of like I used a Sharpie to change a hurricane map to make myself look right. I now am going to just say, I don't like you being here. That's not the point of the law around green card holders being deported if they commit certain crimes. Those who hold temporary protected status, they can be deported if they commit certain crimes. Legal immigrants who are refugees or asylees could be subject to deportation if they are convicted of crimes or if there's evidence that they pose a national security threat. If a legal immigrant is found to have obtained that legal status because they lied or committed fraud or misrepresented their situation. For example, if you claim asylum and then it turns out you made it all up, the circumstances you described in your home country aren't true, you are subject to deportation. You need a legal finding in order to determine that. And then if you step back, presidents might have some broader authority to deport legal immigrants who are determined to be national security threats, but they would need to be determined to be national security threats through due process. Trump's not talking about that. Trump's just saying the Haitian migrants in Springfield with temporary protected status, we're going to kick them out. The whole point of temporary protected status was there are people from countries suffering from war, disaster, authoritarian rule, political persecution, etc. And we want a framework to give them a safe place to stay while maybe their home countries recover, maybe they don't. When you say, I'm going to go after immigrants who have followed the rules we've established, you can say, I don't think we should give asylum to people. Okay, we'll make that case. That sounds antithetical to what the U.S. is based on, but you can argue, I don't think we should give asylum to people. Fine. But it's been the law for decades, and they did what they are required to do. Many of them have built lives here. Forget about the fact that they're actually contributing very positively in Springfield, Ohio, and were invited to go there. Trump is showing disregard, not only for the humanitarian aspect of this, he's showing disregard not only for the economic aspect of this, he's also showing disregard for the law, because this is what the law says they're supposed to do, and they did it. And what's especially troubling is that the plan targets people who are not only here legally, but they are here legally under a framework which many others are also here legally under. But Trump is only talking about the Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio. If you really wanted, not that I would support it, but if you wanted to appear to be applying this in a fair way, you would say, I'm not just going to target Haitian migrants in Springfield. I'm going to target everyone who is here with a certain status. It's still unclear whether it would be legally justified. It's doubtful whether he would actually succeed, but at least there would be the appearance of being about the law and not about these specific, let's be frank, black migrants from Haiti. Trump is not doing that. The only silver lining, if there is one, is that maybe Trump wouldn't be able to actually do this, but the fact that he wants to is reason enough not to vote for him. J.D. Vance is now desperately trying to save himself after his brutal non-answer during the debate against Tim Walz, where Tim Walz asked, did Trump lose in 2020? And J.D. Vance refused to answer. So yesterday, the day after the debate, J.D. shows up in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Michigan, of course, a critical swing state. And J.D. Vance drops the aw shucks bit. Oh, Tim, you're so cool. And I love that, I didn't know about your kid witnessing a mass shooting and just this aw shucks stuff from Appalachia. You knew this was going to happen. J.D. Vance now going on the offensive against Tim Walz, attacking and insulting him. He wasn't really a nice guy during the debate. He was just playing one. It was all strategic to make himself more likable. Here is something closer to the real J.D. Vance.
Now, it's funny because, we did this debate and then I talked to the president afterwards and we talked a little bit about,
by the way,
what actually...
The reference to Trump as the president, give me a break, dude.
Happened and, some of the points that I made, some of the points that Governor Walz made. And he made this observation. He said that Tim Walz said that he was friends with school shooters twice. And that's something I actually didn't notice that Tim Walz had said that on the debate stage. And I said, did he really say that, sir? And he said, I'm telling you, man, go and watch the clips.
Now, I noticed it when Tim Walz said that. I assumed what he meant was he was friends with school shooting victims. It's not really like the biggest deal.
He said he was friends with school shooters twice. And I said that was probably only the third or fourth dumbest comment Tim Walz made that night then. Because look, I got to be honest, I feel a little bad for Governor Walz.
There you go. He feels bad for Governor Walz, even though every post-debate poll says it was basically a 50-50 debate. So ultimately, JD is asked during this event in Auburn Hills, why wouldn't you just answer who won the election? Like, just answer it. It's not that complicated. And of course, the crowd boos that he's even being asked this. JD gives another ridiculous answer, and Fox News decides to cut away. It's sort of the trifecta.
With some elected officials or election officials last week about their concern about people who are trying to undermine our elections. Why didn't you answer the question last night during the debate about who won the 2020 presidential election?
Well, look, here's the
boo, people asking real obvious questions.
simple reason. The media is obsessed with talking about the election of 4 years ago. I'm focused on the election of 33 days from now because I want to throw Kamala Harris out of office and get...
Imagine people clapping to reinforce that JD is right not to answer the most basic question, who won the 2020 election? The crowd is clapping. That's how you know they're in a cult.
Back to common sense economic policies. But I also think you can believe that America needs to have secure and free elections, but also talk about the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, Democrats in the U.S. Congress blocked a piece of legislation that would have ensured illegal aliens don't vote in our elections. If you believe in American democracy, if you believe in our constitutional republic, you should be trying to strengthen American election integrity and not weaken it. So we're going to talk about election integrity because I believe that every vote ought to count, but only the legally cast votes, and that's why we fight for election integrity, and that's why we care so much about it. Now, this
Very important place for the next 33 days, that's for sure. And that.
So there is Fox News cutting away. You know, I got to give JD credit. His makeup looks great. Like I mean, his eyeliner looks fantastic. The eyeshadow, it looks like mascara. It really looks great. But that's about the only compliment I can give him for this speech. He says that it is a question of looking forward rather than looking back. But if you don't even acknowledge who won in 2020, why on earth should we be looking forward, since you're just completely wrong about the most basic facts? Now, I have one other clip to play for you, which is maybe the most blatant projection I've seen from JD for a while. It's about Kamala Harris. Listen to this.
One of the things that people in D.C. say about Kamala Harris, and it's Democrats that say this, it's people she served with in the Senate, and it's also Republicans. And of course, they say this in private, but they'll say Kamala Harris is very insecure. She doesn't like to be challenged. If you don't like to be challenged and you don't like to engage in open debate, you should be nowhere near the Oval Office of the United States of America.
What's really funny is that it's hard to think of a more insecure behavior than JD being unwilling to even acknowledge Trump lost in 2020 because he's scared and insecure. Trump might kick me off the ticket. He might throw me under the bus if I just acknowledge that he lost in 2020. Talk about insecurity. Talk about insecurity when you were presented with your quotes about Trump being America's Hitler and being horrible in every way, and text messages and podcast interviews. He said this dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of times. And you're presented with that, and you can do nothing other than say, listen, it's no secret I had sometimes differences with the president, but he's great now. He's great. He's the leader we need. That's really the insecurity, not Kamala Harris. JD is the pinnacle of what they love to call beta behavior. Their word, not mine, not the way I categorize behavior, but it fits if the shoe fits, as they like to say. JD is in damage control mode. I expect to see it continue. And one of the reasons I expect to see it continue is because of the disastrous interview Trump gave to Dave Ramsey. We'll talk about that later. Let's take a break. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube at youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Who is going to win the 2024 presidential election? This is the million-dollar question we're going to have to wait a few more weeks to find an answer to. But we have ways to predict who has the best shot at winning. Polls, historical trends, prediction markets, qualitative analyses, and many other ways. Everybody has an opinion about which, if any, of these can or should be trusted. Some say you can't trust the polls. Others say you can't trust these particular polls, but you can trust those polls. You can look at these other indicators or scientifically supported meta-analyses. And most people I'm hearing from about this issue say, David, you're looking at it all wrong. Here is the one right way to evaluate all of these different metrics. Well, what I want to do today, because I think it'll be useful, not just for the next month, but beyond in general in applying principles to these different models, is I'm going to compare and explain some of these different approaches, starting with one that I use, which is the Real Clear Politics sort of platform. One way to assess who has the best shot at winning the election is to take a look at the polling averages for all of the swing states and assume whoever's leading in the state right now will eventually win that state. If Trump's leading Arizona right now, we can imagine he's going to win Arizona in a month. So we will start by applying that idea to the Real Clear Politics voting average and then use 270 to win as our map system for electoral votes. So on 270 to win, we'll clear the battleground states for a moment. We'll give the clear blue states to Kamala Harris, the clear red states to Trump, and this leaves seven swing states: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So at the starting point with the sort of in the bag states, you see Kamala Harris starts with 226 and Donald Trump starts with 219. 270 is what you need to win. Now we look at the polling averages and we see that Kamala Harris is leading Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan, while Donald Trump is currently leading Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. Pennsylvania is tied right now, right down the middle, looking at the Real Clear Politics average of polling in Pennsylvania. If we assume that these aggregate polls are correct and we assign the states accordingly, we see that without Pennsylvania, neither candidate gets the 270 they need, and it would all come down to Pennsylvania, which again, right now is tied in the Real Clear Politics polling average. Now let's look at 538, one of the most popular election forecasting models. First question, how does this model work? The 538 model calculates polling averages, applies adjustments for temporary bounces that happen after party conventions, and it recognizes that polling averages are influenced across states based on similarities in voting history, demographics, geography. So, for example, a polling change in one state might affect similar states in the same political region. Beyond polling, the model uses 11 economic indicators. It considers non-farm payrolls, inflation, stock market performance. These indicators are standardized and transformed into daily measures of growth. It also considers political factors like incumbency. And in 2024, arguably that's less relevant since Joe Biden is not running. Kamala Harris is a semi-incumbent, makes it a little more complicated. And according to the 538 model as of today, Kamala Harris wins 58 out of 100 simulations with today's data, and Donald Trump wins only 42 out of 100 simulations using today's data. The way that this works is the model runs 1,000 simulations accounting for slightly different factors, and as of today, Kamala Harris leads in most of those factors. So that's 538. Now, many of you will write to me and you'll say, David, you should only consider Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin. Others write in and say, David, you should not consider Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin because he is not trustworthy. Okay, well, let's explore it. The Silver Bulletin is Nate Silver's new project since he left 538. This model is based on the original forecasting model created by 538, adapting its methodology for the 2028 election and omitting COVID-19 related adjustments from 2020. The Silver Bulletin differentiates between registered and likely voters. The idea there is ensure that the polling data reflects more accurately who is actually going to vote. And the model also accounts for house effects. These are biases that certain polling organizations may have. And by doing this, the idea is you minimize the influence of skewed results from any single pollster. Some of you write to me and you say, Real Clear Politics includes some right-wing pollsters that I don't believe should be included. If you believe in what Nate Silver is doing, he's accounting for that. More reliable polls are given greater weight in the averages, and that, in theory, stabilizes the overall polling results and reduces the impact of these outlier polls. As of today, based on the Silver Bulletin's polling aggregation, Kamala Harris is winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada. Donald Trump is winning North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. And again, pulling out the 270 to win map, if we use these numbers, which give Pennsylvania to Kamala Harris, Harris gets 276 electoral votes and wins the presidency. The Economist has a model which assesses the probabilities of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump winning individual states as well as the overall election. The forecast starts with predictions from the national popular vote. It leverages national polls and what it calls fundamentals. These are structural, qualitative factors that influence voter behavior. And then it goes beyond national predictions. It assesses individual state outcomes by calculating each state's partisan lean. It considers past election results, the home states of candidates, and economic indicators. The model starts with a prior prediction based on historical data, updates it with new polling, and generates a posterior forecast. This model recognizes polls are limited. There are sampling errors, there are non-sampling errors, and right now, this forecast model predicts Kamala Harris having a 60% chance of victory and Trump a 40% chance of victory. Next, we go to Alan Lichtman. Alan Lichtman was on the show a couple of times recently. His model is the 13 keys. Earlier in the election in September, Lichtman predicted that Democratic nominee Kamala Harris would win. Lichtman has accurately been predicting elections since 1984, with some controversy as to whether his model previously predicted the electoral victor versus the popular vote. He says he has changed what he's predicting, but needless to say, he claims, his model's claim to fame is calling Trump's victory over Hillary in 2016, Joe Biden's win in 2020, an early call of Barack Obama's reelection in 2012, and others. His predictions rely on a model he developed that evaluates 13 true-false statements regarding the political landscape, and it focuses on factors related to the incumbent's party. For Harris to win, Lichtman notes that she can't lose more than 7 or more keys. In this election cycle, Lichtman has assessed that Kamala Harris has the no primary key, the no third party key, the strong short-term economy key, the strong long-term economy key, the major policy change key, the no social unrest key, the no scandal key, and the uncharismatic challenger key. On the other hand, Trump has the midterm gains key, the incumbent seeking re-election key, the charismatic incumbent key. Now, ultimately, there is debate as to whether Lichtman is, quote, correctly scoring some of these keys. Many of you have written to me and you said, I don't disagree with the model. I disagree with Lichtman's assessment. In his assessment, Trump was unable to take enough keys from the incumbent party in the White House, meaning Kamala Harris is going to win. Despite the unique circumstances of 2024, including Harris replacing Biden as the nominee, which is a major event in politics, Lichtman maintains his model is reliable, and he says it will be a consistent guide for this and future elections. We will see. We next can look at the betting odds. Many websites profess to tell you where the money is in terms of people betting. That's not who will you vote for, it's who do you predict will win. And today we're going to use predict it for an example, but there's many of these. The argument for the accuracy of betting odds is markets are a wise tool for determining election winners. And the people are taking into account who they expect to win rather than their desires. Predict It is a platform where you can buy and sell shares in potential outcomes, sort of like it's like a futures market of sorts. The prices can be interpreted as probabilities. And right now, you can interpret that the Predict It polling markets, betting markets, say Harris is seen as having a 54% chance of winning, Trump 49% chance of winning. If you believe Harris or Trump has a better chance than what the market suggests, you can buy shares at the current price, which will raise their price. The total between the two numbers can go beyond 100 because Predict It allows for multiple outcomes and probabilities to be represented, and the market is driven by the collective actions of traders, the idea being that they are regularly acting on all of the information. It's a dynamic pricing system. It's better than polls, they would have you believe. Next, we have the prediction of Thomas Miller. Thomas Miller is a data scientist whose forecasting predictions include Biden's narrow win and the surprising victories in the Georgia Senate races, which flipped control to Democrats. Miller's approach focuses on using political betting markets, which he also believes provide a more scientific basis for prediction than traditional polling methods, because these markets reflect real-time sentiments and expectations among a larger group of engaged bettors. In the 2020 election, Miller had notable accuracy. He analyzed betting odds from Predict It that let him track how odds fluctuated on a continuous basis instead of individual polling snapshots. As of mid-September, Miller's model predicts a significant electoral victory for Harris, suggesting she might even get over 400 electoral votes, saying that such a drastic shift in betting odds since Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden as the presumptive and eventual official Democratic nominee is such a major turnaround in voter sentiment that this could be a blowout. It seems overly optimistic. Kamala Harris winning out 400 electoral votes means she wins states like Texas and Florida. I don't see it, but landslide or not, it is still another prediction that says Kamala will win. We then go to the primary model. The primary model assigns a 75% probability that Kamala Harris will defeat Trump in November. The methodology here looks at historical cases where sitting presidents withdrew, notably 52 and 68, 1952, 1968, uses their primary performances to predict outcomes for the Democratic nominees who replace them. And in both of those instances, it resulted in an accurate forecast. The model also considers historical election cycles that tend to favor incumbents versus out parties. And this further supports the prediction of Harris with a projected electoral outcome of 315 electoral votes for Harris, 223 for Trump. The primary model uses a three-step process. It estimates the popular vote, converts that to an electoral college prediction, and then runs simulations to assess the likelihood. The counterpoint here is this is a model based on only an N of two instances in the 20th century, and that may not be so good in terms of predictive value. So, after looking at all of these different forecasting models, what can we conclude? Number one, they mostly show Kamala Harris winning. Maybe you thought one of the models seemed more accurate or had a more sound methodology than another. You can take your pick, but it is better to look at all of this data as a whole. We can't predict future events, but we can make educated guesses. That's what the models are looking to do. They are not a guarantee. The models in 2016 heavily pointed to Hillary Clinton is going to win. It didn't happen. It will likely be a close election, coming down to 250,000 votes in 3 to 5 states. And that means that all of these indicators are based on very borderline scenarios. The election hasn't been decided. Most people have not yet voted early. The outcome won't be decided by researchers or models or pollsters or Nate Silver. It'll be decided by whether you vote and by whether I vote, I will be voting, and whether others vote. So the takeaway is it's looking like Kamala Harris could win this, and we could finally put Trumpism in the dustbin of history. But you've got to make sure you're registered, vote.org. You've got to make sure you know where to vote and when, if you plan to vote early, before November 5th. And on November 6th, hopefully, maybe November 7th or 8th, we'll know which of these was ultimately the most accurate. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Donald Trump sat down with pseudo-financial guru and right-wing dude Dave Ramsey. Now, I'm going to play a clip of this for you. I want you to, for a moment, listen more to how Trump is talking rather than the laughable answer that he gives about how to hire people. Trump goes, well, I hire my kids. So the content of the answer is nepotism, nepotism, nepotism. Trump's slurring. And we were told, oh, in the Elon Musk interview, it was because of the cell phone audio processing through Twitter Spaces, and his diction is completely fine and crystal clear. Sounds like David Attenborough in reality, but the phone's making him sound weird. Trump is sitting in the room with Dave Ramsey. He's slurring. Dave Ramsey is not slurring. They're in the same room with the same mics. Something is going on with this guy's speech. And by the way, he says the way to have a good business is hire your kids.
Dealt with. Talk about what it's like to work for Donald Trump. How do you hire leaders and put people in place that do that? Because I know you're obviously not there personally managing that, but you put a culture in place in your organization, and that applies to the administration as well, hiring people that are quality leaders.
Well, my son, Eric, is very much involved, and he runs a lot of it. And Don helps out a lot. And Ivanka, to a lesser extent, you know, she's a
Are we going to blame a cell phone again, guys?
great mother and everything. She did a fantastic job in the administration. All she wanted to do is get people jobs. And she'd go around and see Exxon and see Walmart. She wanted jobs for people. It's really pretty amazing. She could have had a very glamorous job, and she would have done well. But Eric's done a great job. And I did a similar type of job when I was doing it. Now I'm doing a thing called running for president, so I don't get...
So are we again going to blame a cell phone? Do all audio devices make Trump sound like he's slurring, but nobody else? I think I have the same mic these guys are using, although I can't completely tell. But I think it is. I mean, I hope that I've never sounded like that, except when I say, God bless the United States. Trump, still slurring badly later in the interview, announces he will take America back to the 1890s by putting a tariff on everything. It's crazy, and he won't stop slurring.
But a lot of people like, oh, well, we don't want to have tariffs. The country was at the richest point in its history in the 1890s. It was all tariffs. If you looked at William McKinley as an example, he was a big tariff president. They had committees that were put in charge of what to do with the money. We were taking in so much money.
So 3 things. The slurring continues. The cuts suggest to me that this was chopped up to make Trump sound coherent. And number 3, Trump's 20% tariff on everything plan is hugely inflationary. And hilariously, stay out of debt Dave Ramsey is just sucking up to Trump, despite the fact that Trump added gobs of national debt and was one of the worst presidents on the deficit that we've had in a long time. But Trump insists the tariffs will save the country.
Making it great again. I had the country going just prior to COVID coming in at a level that nobody had ever seen. And even if you go all 4 years, it was so good that even with that terrible interruption that just destroyed the world, we had the greatest 4 years. The economy was so great. The job numbers were the best ever.
Yeah, you could argue that Trump's mishandling of COVID led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands or more people who could have otherwise survived. A whacked out interview, but again, raising real questions. Why is Trump slurring during these interviews? He is embroiled in a battle between tongue, teeth, and the roof of his mouth, and everybody's coming out a loser in that fight. It's not a fight that anybody is winning. The English language suffering a brutal defeat. And Dave Ramsey is so pathetic at this point. You know, he's first framing that Trump is braver than Kamala Harris because the Harris campaign has not accepted sitting down with him. He's an overt anti-vax right-winger who loves Trump, and it's not obvious why Kamala Harris would sit down with him, but then they go, oh, you know, she's not willing, she's not able, she's scared. But here's Trump sitting down for what was supposed to be an hour. I think they ended up getting 30 minutes or something like that. Dave Ramsey conceded that they took nearly half of the time they had agreed to. These interviews are exercises in self-aggrandizement and throwing bouquets at each other. And what we learned is Trump's having some real speech issues, that's for sure. Speaking of speech issues, Corey Lewandowski, a Trump supporter, former aide, staffer, who the hell knows what his role is at this point? Corey Lewandowski was reduced to a sputtering mess when he was asked by Jim Acosta, all right, listen, J.D. Vance didn't answer, did Trump lose in 2020? Will you answer, Corey? And Lewandowski should really be a circus performer based on the pretzel he's able to twist himself into here to avoid answering a very simple question. Did Trump lose in 2020? Let's listen.
Let's get right into this. Last night, Senator Vance refused to answer whether Trump lost the 2020 election. Let's listen to that.
I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
Yeah, Corey, why is this so difficult for the Trump campaign to answer? I mean, it's 2024. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? Can you answer that?
Jim, I think it's very simple. The American people have passed the 2020 election. They're focused on an election which is just under 5 weeks away. And what we have an opportunity to do now is to talk about two different visions for America. And what J.D. Vance laid out last night is a very different vision than what Tim Walz and Kamala Harris want to say. So, look, we can go back and relitigate the 2020 election, or we can look at what we can do to make America better for everyday Americans who are struggling under Bidenomics.
Yeah,
they're struggling
Corey,
under...
It's not relitigating. It's just a simple question. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? I mean, that's an easy
Jim,
one.
why are we talking about 2020 anymore? Does the American people care about the 2020 election anymore, or do they care about being able to put food on their table, gas in their car,
I
and
think one
heating oil
reason
in
why
their...
it's coming up, Corey, is because the former president has said on the campaign trail repeatedly that there was all this widespread fraud in 2020. That was not the case. And he's also teeing up the same kinds of challenges after this election. It hasn't even happened yet. So it is a very relevant
Jim,
question.
we know there was fraud. There's no question there was some fraud that took place in the 2020 election. There's no question about that.
No widespread fraud. No widespread fraud.
What does widespread mean, Jim? Is one vote that's illegal enough? Or is how many do you determine is widespread? What is that number?
There were instances of voter fraud from Trump supporters. I mean, you know that from the 2020 campaign. But
and you're saying there was none on the other side, Jim?
I mean, I'm sure there was, but Corey, I mean, every expert, people from inside the Trump administration who...
So you get it. He's not going to answer. J.D. Vance won't answer. Corey Lewandowski won't answer. It's the simplest of questions. Who won the 2020 election? And they will not answer. At another moment, Jim Acosta, good for him, asked Corey Lewandowski, are you now ready to say Haitian migrants are not eating cats and dogs? He's not willing to acknowledge that either.
Immigration. All right. Last night, J.D. Vance said immigrants have, quote, destroyed Americans' lives in Springfield before having his mic cut. But all of this got started when Trump falsely claimed at last month's debate that Haitian migrants were eating pets. The governor of Ohio, the mayor of Springfield, have both come out and said this is not true. Corey, can you say that Haitian migrants are not eating pets in Springfield? Can you say that?
You know what I can say, Jim? I can say that 13,099 murderers were let into this country, 16,000 rapists, 425,000 people in the last 4 years have been let into this country by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's own Customs and Border Protection that are running
Corey,
around this country, Jim.
The other thing, too, it's Kamala Harris.
Crimes.
I don't know. Is there...
All right, so he won't answer that. And then now Jim Acosta says to Corey Lewandowski what every sane person has been wondering. Why can't he just say Kamala? Why does he keep saying Kamala? He must know how to pronounce her name. And after not answering whether Trump lost the 2020 election, after not answering, can you just acknowledge that people aren't eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio? Now he asks him, why can't you just pronounce Kamala's name correctly?
Why do you guys say Kamala? That is, it's Kamala Harris.
Jim, we know that they're committing crimes against Americans. Why can't these individuals talk about the individuals who've been killed by illegal immigrants? 13,099.
He also won't answer why he's calling her Kamala. He won't answer anything. What's the point of interviewing Corey Lewandowski? I don't know. You could say, well, it's ratings, David. Are the ratings even good? It doesn't really make sense to me. I think he goes back once more to the Kamala thing.
It goes to show you the politics of the top of the administration, whether it's Mayorkas or it's Kamala or it's Joe Biden. Donald Trump should have had additional resources.
What is this Kamala? It's Kamala Harris. Corey, you've been in this business a long time. I think you're a mature grown-up. It's Kamala Harris. Can you just say, can you say Kamala, or you cannot say Kamala?
Jim, can you admit 13,099 murders that have come into the country? You say you haven't.
Well, Corey, I appreciate you coming on. Maybe we'll have you back. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, maybe not, though. I like that. Maybe we'll have you back. I would say probably not. Folks, it's obvious what the Kamala thing is. Listen, you all know. I know that her name is Tulsi Gabbard. I know that, okay? So when I say Tulsi, yes, I am showing that I have disdain for her. That's absolutely right. It's obviously not race-based disdain. It's not ethnicity-based. I think that she has become a tool of the MAGA right wing, despite professing that she was the last real liberal when she tricked a bunch of people into thinking that that's what she was. And so I know her name's Tulsi. I'm calling her Tulsi. It is pejorative. I'm expressing my distaste. They know that it's Kamala. And when they're saying Kamala, it's to express their disdain and also to show and frame it as it sounds more foreign. It sounds less American. It sounds less white. This is not a Kamala. It's like Barack Hussein Obama. It's the same thing. That's what they're doing. Corey Lewandowski's doing it. Jim Acosta points it out. They're going to keep doing it. She could be president 4 years, and she probably will be, the way things are looking, hopefully anyway. And they'll be saying Kamala by the end. That's for sure. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. We had a couple people, and I do mean a couple, not pleased with what I wore, I guess, a couple days ago. Listen to this.
Hi, David. I'm a longtime fan. I've been watching since way back in the Pat days.
Yeah.
Back in 2008. And
Okay.
I am a left-leaning person. But on your October 2nd episode, you wore an outfit that made you look like some kind of fascist Sith Lord Star Wars evil empire guy. I don't get what you're doing with that style. You know, like, it's just fucking weird. What is with that?
Yeah. So it was yesterday, not Tuesday. I got one other email, and the email, it was so presumptive and self-centered. Some guy wrote in and said, David, I wrote to you last year and told you not to wear any more turtlenecks, and you wore a damn turtleneck again. Honestly, guys, who do you think you are? Okay. My clothes now are the focus. So if you don't like the turtlenecks, it's getting cold. The turtlenecks are going to continue. If you don't like this, that, or the other thing, we all know if I don't shower before filming, I've got bedhead. I have an asymmetrical thing that happens because I sleep on one side. It's going to keep happening. It's been happening for a while. It's going to be an asymmetric hairstyle. Let's focus on 30 days until who the hell knows what is going to happen to this country. Okay? So the turtlenecks will continue until the morale improves. Let's leave it at that. We've got such a great bonus show for you today. I joked last week, maybe someone on the left will buy InfoWars and do something with it, given that it's being auctioned off. There's a liberal watchdog group considering doing exactly that. We will analyze the impact of the $20 fast food minimum wage in California, and we will talk about a skydiving instructor who has now been sentenced to prison time after 28 deaths took place at his skydiving school. What happened? What is going on? Is the punishment just? Don't miss the bonus show. Sign up at joinpacman.com. I'll see you then, and I'll be back tomorrow. If you snore at night or you get hot when you sleep, check out our sponsor, 8 Sleep, who just released the Pod 4 Ultra. It can cool your bed down to 20 degrees below the room temperature so you get better sleep, or it can heat your bed up, and it can sense when you're snoring and lift your head so you can breathe better. It's truly amazing. I use an 8 Sleep pod every night. Once you try it, you'll understand how big of a difference it makes for sleep. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman for $350 off. The link is in the description.